Women's cricket has been played for just as long as men's cricket. It all began on village greens in England in the 18th century. The first recorded match was played in 1745 between the women of two Surrey villages, Bramley and Hambledon. The teams wore different coloured hair ribbons, red for one team and blue for the other, so that people could tell them apart. Over the next 150 years, many women's cricket clubs formed. But the major turning point in the history of women's cricket came with the formation of the first governing body. In October 1926, a group of female hockey players travelled to the village of Colwall in Herefordshire for a few days of cricket on the Malvern College ground. They agreed to form a women's cricket association to provide facilities for and bring together those women and girls who previously have had little opportunity of playing cricket after leaving school. Clubs and county associations were formed and matches were played. By 1938, there were 123 women's clubs affiliated to the Women's Cricket Association. By 1934, women's cricket associations had also been formed in Australia and New Zealand, and it was decided the time was right to play the first international women's cricket. So an England team set sail for Australia, where they played in 3 test matches, of which they won 2. International cricket continued to be played whenever the women could afford to travel, and in 1958 it was agreed that an International Women's Cricket Council should be formed. The council's purpose was to promote further international tours. The founding members were England, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa and the Netherlands. Its membership gradually expanded as women's cricket spread to countries like India, West Indies, Ireland, Pakistan and Sri Lanka. In 1973, it was women who staged the first ever Cricket World Cup. They beat the men to it by 2 years. England captain Rachel Hayhoe-Flint persuaded millionaire businessman Jack Hayward to cover the costs of the first World Cup. He paid £40,000 to bring 7 teams to England to compete in the tournament. England, Young England, Australia, New Zealand, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and an international 11 made up of players from all participating countries. England beat Australia in the first ever World Cup final. The tournament was such a success that the Marylebone Cricket Club, the club who own Lord's Cricket Ground in London, agreed to let women play a match there for the first time. England met Australia at Lord's on 4th of August 1976, led out by Rachel Hayhoe-Flint, and won the historic match by 8 wickets. Women's cricket had always been a barrier, so in the 1990s a closer relationship was sought with the people running men's cricket. In 1998, the Women's Cricket Association merged with the England and Wales Cricket Board, the ECB. The ECB have run both women's and men's cricket ever since. In 2005, the International Women's Cricket Council agreed to hand over control of the global women's game to the Men's International Cricket Council, the ICC. Today, the ICC oversees all international women's tournaments. For most of its history, there was very little money to be made from women's cricket, and the players played simply because they enjoyed it. But linking up with the men allowed more money to flow into women's cricket. In May 2014, the ECB made history by introducing the first professional contracts for women, awarding these to 18 of the women who represent England internationally. Last year, the ECB created 41 more contracts. This time, they were aimed at non-England players and awarded to women playing in regional teams like Southern Vipers, who play in Southampton. This means that many more women now have the chance to play cricket full-time and become professional cricketers. The profile of women's cricket has grown enormously over the last 10 years. The Women's World Cup in 2017 was watched by more than 180 million people across the world, and every one of the 30,000 seats at the final at Lord's in London was filled. England beat India in the final and became world champions. In March 2020, Australia played India in the final of the 2020 World Cup, which was held at the Melbourne Cricket Ground in Australia. 86,000 people turned up to watch, the biggest crowd ever for a women's sporting event in Australia.